Hey everybody. It is just so much of a pleasure for me to sit down with Alina. There's so much I want to say about Alina, but I'm going to try to keep my mouth shut a little bit and let you hear from her. I want to share a little story though that she didn't know I was going to share. I was in a meeting just recently, and she didn't know I was in the meeting. It was a meeting of facilitators, and my operations manager, kind of the team, was all there, and she was just riffing like a Zen master in this meeting. She didn't know I was there, and she was really talking about from her own clarity all the dimensions and her own work, and I just was moved by it. I was just sat there like, wow, like just listening to this clarity come from someone who at one point was very resistant to our third dimension work. And so that's why she brings something special here to this conversation, because she had direct experience with pretty strong resistance to our third dimension work. But now she shines as this light and this for this work, but really for her own embodiment, her own experience and her clarity, not really for the work. This, I think that the work is the work, but how we interface with it is what matters. And she finally, got into third dimension working with really deep, you all, deep as anybody that I've seen. So first of all, hi, Alina. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Scott. Nice to be here. Yeah.
I want to talk about, well, first of all, Alina is an all dimensions trainer. Just to let you know, I'm doing interviews with my all dimensions trainer. These are the true leaders in KI, the folks that train people, that help people when they get stuck. And there's only a few of them, all dimensions trainers, and Alina is one of them. She's also a non-dual teacher in her own right, and she was before she ever came here. And I'll say this: I criticize the non-dual teachers somewhat if they're not trauma informed. I have nothing but confidence with my endorsement of Alina as a teacher who doesn't encourage bypassing. For anybody who really wants to bring the non-dual into even more into KI, like in some personal way, she's a really good person for that and won't lead you astray. She knows the work well. Okay, so enough of just
through my own pitfalls, right?
Yeah,
And being
well,
stuck in awareness. But we
yeah,
learn, and then we can lead people in that way. Yeah.
exactly, and that's why it's so valuable. So I want to start with your own experience, and can we rewind the clock about a year and a half or 2 years ago when Dan and I were developing the third dimension work, and you were a trainer or a training assistant, and I'd gone very deep already, and you're just like me, but there was a bypass. And I want to let you tell the story of your resistance to the work. And first of all, where do you think the resistance came from for you before you talk about working it out for yourself?
Yeah. So thank you. It's a wonderful topic because I do remember not seeing that at all, like not seeing that I'm resistant to the work. I was honestly had the idea that when I learned KI, as it was basic KI at that point, and the way it helped me to uncover a lot of shame with basic KI tools, but I thought the work was done. I felt because of the awareness piece, we can feel quite peaceful. And I think due to doing a lot of yoga previously and kind of probably moving some energy, that I didn't have necessarily chronic pain to attend. So I was fooling myself with the ideas that if I don't have chronic pain, I must have no repression. And so that was one of the pieces where it kind of fooled myself. Another one was the fact that KI and the tools that were developed at that time helped me to get to emotions. But I was not understanding that I was getting to safe emotions as opposed to not safe emotions. That was another piece. And one of the emotions that I didn't have at all in my range of emotions, but I thought I was kind of a saint or something like that,
Yeah.
that I did it, that, I already fixed it in past lives or something like that, and came here all clean, that it was anger. So, but at that time I was not seeing it. So, of course, there was also like the privilege, I'm already teaching and people are transforming so much and, in my sessions, and I'm helping them so much. Therefore, I have everything in my toolkit to help people, and not understanding where there's still so much hiding in me. So yeah, and honestly, there were so many excuses. I was literally I felt like left behind because a lot of trainers became green checkmark facilitators. Oh, sorry, a lot of facilitators, yeah. And I was kind of stuck there, like honestly feeling probably frustrated, upset at you that you don't see that I've already done all the work.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and yeah, and well, and I had a few people with me, kind of how would I say, supporting my
Yeah,
perspective, which was great for me at that time, because we're together at this, you know, like we're not getting what are we not getting with those repression tools, because it seems like second dimension can get to emotions. so that's what I was quite stuck, but and resisting. What else? The insights from that resistance place. And again, since anger was repressed, there was no, I couldn't reach out to you and say, you know, hey, you know, like, what's really going on? What am I missing? I'm angry. Like, hey, can I get on board? Can you teach me how can I learn the tools better? So I was just quiet about it. And I mean, quiet about it and just talking with people that have more yeah, I guess develop friendship in KI that are not you, who are the, you know, seem like the I don't know if the villain, but I guess unconsciously seem so.
Yeah. Thank you for like totally saying all that, because I think there's a lot of people who feel that way, not only within the organization but outside, because I flipped the message somewhere along the way. Um, okay, you said so many things. I'm writing them down. I mean, there's so many areas we could go into. One small area is how we do that. Like when I started talking about repression, I had surrounded myself with people who were saying yes to my paradigm, which means helping me stay in repression. And even my husband said, "Oh, yeah, that's great. You've surrounded yourself by yes people. I'm sure that's helping a lot." That's how he is, you know. It's like, oh, that's true. And so I had to like, you know, I had to reach out beyond the non-dual world, or out beyond my own paradigm, and listen to somebody else like John Sarno and Ken Wilber and some of these others who were kind of saying in some way, "Hey, Scott, you missed something."
Yeah.
And within your paradigm, you can't see it. So I want to talk about just maybe briefly, how if we're surrounding ourselves with people who are only agreeing with us and we're stuck,
Yeah.
what do we do about that? If we're
Yeah. You know, honestly, my inspiration came from Toshi, the other trainer, who was actually my trainee in second dimension. He was in my small group, and just really seeing him excel so much and liberate so much. And I was very, very excited for him, first of all, because I inspired him to get out into the world and just to seize all the opportunities and say yes to life. And here he was doing it, and I was behind.
Yes.
So, and I was behind, stuck with my paradigm people, right? Because he was already ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of an interesting, well, and Darby too, because I started with her, we trained together. And here, but I was thinking, well, for her, she had the chronic pain, and therefore she was able to get there, because, you know, my idea, I don't have chronic pain, therefore I don't have repression,
Right.
was really, really in the way. So it's probably them two that pulled me out, and the inspiration to watch them being, you know, doing the work and going deeper and really finding deeper freedom, that got me kind of curious and inspired to start getting out of my bubble, really. And yeah, and it was, I remember it was the time where Tochi probably created the manual for the roadmap or something like that. And I printed it out, I remember, and I'm like, okay, I'm just really gonna dive and explore these tools for oneself, for myself. And not, you know, and I think that's kind of the gift I feel I have, and I wish like everyone can tap into their own kind of curiosity around that, so that people can check scientifically these tools for themselves. And I'm not saying like take the tool and just do it on your own without any skill. I mean, I think the piece of awareness, being here, being present, and already the second dimension KI and learning, already knowing inquiry, grabbing these tools and really implementing them scientifically on my own experience, getting curious, like what's really going on? Okay, I don't have chronic pain, right? But there must be something. And what actually, honestly, what happened, what really helped me is I separated with my partner with 13 years together, and we were great anger repressors, both of us. And there was this deep, of course, there was a lot of grief and crying, but crying, it was a very, very accessible emotion. But I learned and started playing with those tools in that particular instance of difficulty in my life. And I found so much resistance to feel. And it was quite fascinating to really find that there was a resistance to feel deeper emotions, like even deeper layers of hurt, deeper layers of grief, and deeper layers of anger around this. And anger altogether, it was like no, like I can't be angry about this. We're already hurt. I can't be angry around this at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's just this kind of curiosity to start implementing and trying these tools. And for some people, of course, they will need help with how to do this skillfully, because when we do this skillfully, I think what was really, really important is when I started implementing those tools is the level of openness that is mixed with curiosity brought me to deep, intimate places with those deep, very painful contractions. Okay, I didn't have chronic pain that continued, but when I started inquiring and using those tools, everything got so inflamed and so painful. I'm like, oh, okay, there's a lot of things here that I was not seeing. There's a lot of things that I was not feeling. And that, I'm also seeing that with clients right now and trainees where, we did like a very more gentle kind of approach of second dimension. And then when we go into more unsafe emotions, right, there's kind of a level of resilience that we need to bring into that skillfully so that energies can move and we can start feeling better.
For sure. And something that we talked about that I think it would be good for people to hear you talk about is how you move through the resistance. So we were just talking about what it was like to finally, through the breakup, to finally discover the benefit of those tools. But you and I talked about before the recording things that aspects of that openness, like to break it down some, because there's elements to it. So if you could explain, I'll kind of prompt you what we were talking about, but we talked about curiosity, openness, self-honesty, and verifying is the other thing, is verifying for yourself the stuff that Dan or I say, instead of just believing us. Okay, is it here? Verifying somatic testing is what we call it now, or something, in the beginning, where we go in and we discover, okay, is what they're saying true? My triggers, the breakup is connected to this, the chronic pain, the triggers. And so, take us through that process of you start from resistance to intimacy and to learning the tools from there. How did that work for you?
Yeah. So, the resistance, honestly, it kept me, if we wouldn't bring what we know right now into those blind spots of lending, it kept me probably there for like a good year and a half. But what really cracked open the resistance to that, I feel it's the curiosity and finding for myself if I really have it, and by testing it. And at that time, we didn't have the somatic testing, but I think the curiosity brought me exactly there. I had to see for myself, do I have anger in my system? And by using the tools that were already developed back there, rapid fire and that, it was igniting particularly with my mom. And I started to examine my whole fear of going there. And it showed me so much that I'm like, whoa, okay, there's a lot going on here by just testing the ground. And I think the commitment, not necessarily as I was talking with you previously, not necessarily even to the tools, because there's this constant evolution of that, but it's the commitment to a deeper freedom. I had no idea what it's going to bring me, really sitting with repression, but it was quite interesting that it did kind of cleared out the debris of that still was there in this ability to express myself fully, ability to stand up and not shrink back, to really fully say what I want to say. And even if adding an anger level to it, not necessarily explode on people in rage, but be really confidently stating my truth. That's what got uncovered. And the ability to be in the sessions, right, when I facilitate even the Tuesday meetings of natural rest, there was always an energy there that didn't want to show up.
Yeah.
There was still a lingering there, although I sat with so much shame, and that cleared out. But it's just with addressing and really testing for myself that there was this deep fear of anger, and going into that anger through these wonderful tools that are very, very sharp, super effective. And going there, it kind of cleared out this alignment of not giving a damn to show up as myself, no matter what comes out of here, no preparation, nothing, just like life prompts and life responds. And there's nothing in the way. There's no fear anymore in the way of, and I feel anger opens up that so much, this confidence in our speech, confidence in the ability to express ourselves fully. So it's it's in the commitment to deeper freedom. It's in the curiosity, and it's in the willingness to how do I say, to admit to the resistance, to the fear. I think admitting that the resistance is here and really meeting the resistance, and the resistance was screaming, don't feel pain. That was my command. Don't feel pain, stay strong. And the other one with anger was avoid anger by all means. And just really, really addressing these two commands and really saturating them and really sitting with them and just letting them fully be okay, fully be here from awareness, from seeing, from deeper feeling, from intimacy. That just opened up so much, the curiosity to play with the tools, also the how do I say, the commitment to experiment. And another thing that really, really helped with resistance is reaching out and having some sessions, with Darby and with Toshi, and seeing that. Another thing was, it was like I was judging. It was interesting that I heard another facilitator sharing that it's mechanical. Before I came to actually using these tools skillfully, everything felt mechanical. Everything felt like just like repetition. But as soon as really learning how to bring awareness, which I'm saying intimacy, it feels like almost like a medicinal journey. It feels alive. It feels, the energy feels there. You're meeting it. You're fully with it. There's another level to this work. I think it's even more, it's more alive even then, second dimension could be beautiful too. There's compassion there, there's meeting, deficiency and all that. But third dimension could be really, really powerfully and really, really alive and skillful as well.
You said so many things there, and I was just kind of imagining there that you're in the 2D, you're doing the work like I was, and you're close to the 3D. So one thing I wanted to say is, when we're doing first dimensional work, like if you were to go to somebody who's in a mindfulness practice or meditation practice, they don't prompt anything up like 2D, they're probably not going to agree with almost anything that we say. Probably. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like when you're in that first dimension, you're only able to access certain things anyway. And so those things that you can't access, if we're talking about those things from third dimension practice, not only would you not be able to see it? But there might be something in you that would be even threatened by it on an ego level. And then when you get to second dimension and we gain more skill, and you became very skilled in second dimension like me. But then we can't see the third dimension from there, right?
Not at all.
But we can see the first dimension because we can see the value of it. We can see that the mindfulness and the awareness was super value and still very much part of the whole process.
Yeah.
But we couldn't see third dimension or the insights of that when you're in second dimension, and you really can't see it. And that's the issue that we have, because we're trying to bring people through what we call the repression barrier. The big resistance that you're talking about that we meet in third dimension. So all of that to say, you've illuminated quite a few landings that you were in second dimension. You've already been very articulate about that. But I just want to again give the audience a chance to hear what it's like when we're second dimension and the kinds of things that you might believe that would be protecting you from going to the repression. I mean, you already mentioned a lot. I don't know if there's any more, but like even mechanical is one way.
Oh my God.
There's so many other ways. And the other thing before you answer is, I was wondering also if there was any deficiency story that popped up as we were moving into third dimension. Did that mirror back? Like there's something wrong with me, and did that help to go into third dimension, since we know that that's connected to the repression? I don't know if that was there. Just wanted to ask.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, it's the landings were for me. Yeah, it's mechanical. I already done. I'm already free. Especially people, that. I mean, in first dimension, that's a biggie too. That I'm already free, but the body behaves differently. It doesn't behave free at all. Yeah, and then in second dimension, that's exactly it. It's like landing in the idea, as I was saying, if we don't have any particular chronic pain, landing in the idea that there's no repression, landing in the safety of going back to the first dimension. I already saw all my deficiency stories. Therefore, just bringing in more awareness, or just even landing there, starting more like direct pointing or satsangs or something like that. I see people doing that a lot. Reverting from going deeper, they're going backwards.
Say more about that.
Yeah, for sure. And there's it's like it's in the threshold of kind of leaning a little bit towards that fear to be myself, fear of unsafe emotions, right? Unconscious fear that is there. And if we taste it a little bit, even though we're in second dimension, and we can open up that can of worm with reverse inquiry, what's the worst thing that can happen? And if that happens, what's the worst thing that can happen after that? So we can go there, we can touch that. And then what I see happen, either like a feeling of jarring of this, whoa, this is too big. And it feels maybe even liberating in a session. And it feels maybe liberating, whatever, if it's a training or a session. And then what can happen with that the whole system goes to need for safety. And then I do see people either not booking sessions or jumping out of the training and just landing into continuing a more gentle approach, which is just, satsangs, and you are awareness and nothing happens, and you're free as awareness, and people just kind of hang on to that. But as I'm saying, I've been there and you've been there. Enlightenment doesn't clear up our body, and we really have to go and so definitely that. And so sorry, so you asked landing a second dimension and something else.
Yeah. So was there any? So I keep seeing another pattern, which just makes a lot of sense to me, that we've eliminated the third dimension, and it creates deficiency stories in people, which is actually connected to the repression that we deal with in third dimension. But the deficiency story can stop people from going into third dimension. That's why I wonder if that was there for you.
Yeah. I think there's for me, I don't know if a deficiency story kind of brought me to the third dimension, but the beauty of third dimension, I actually uncovered deficiency stories I didn't see with second dimension. And I do see that in other people that I'm working with. And it's quite interesting to understand, because
and you saw that, sorry, in second dimension, you found some new deficiency stories, or in third?
Like I saw it in second dimension, and I thought I worked on it. I thought it kind of got resolved.
Okay. Yeah.
But Actually, it didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, it didn't, because it was linked to repression underneath. And it was still very, very sneakily playing out, especially, well, I think I reached out to in intimate relationships. And it's quite fascinating to see that. And I do see it in my clients as well, not necessarily in intimate relationship. For them, it's a little bit different, maybe with sexual repression or some sort of a repression. And then finding that whatever we worked on second level, and it seemed like we felt a lot and we acknowledged, the past, and we did all that stuff. And that deficiency story is still lingering around, is still playing out almost sneakily, like from the back door. It just sneaks in. And that's what I really found with going into repression. I found that this, especially core, it's actually my core deficiency story. And that was quite fascinating to find. And it was, I'm unseen, therefore I'm unwanted, therefore I'm unloved. And it was connected to a lot of anger repression around my mom not seeing me at all growing up, being absent. And it was quite fascinating, because from clearing the anger, and then when the seeing of that deficiency story was seen playing out in life, the inside out, really seeing it, really bringing it into our daily life, like really seeing it from the core. And seeing of that is just boom, it just like collapsed. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And it was literally hungry for attention, that energy. And it was like looking through text to whatever, my intimate partner. It was just looking for attention. Hey, look at me. And it just, when it dropped. I'm like, wow, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Like how we really, it can be so hidden, and it can be so unconscious. It can be so it's so intelligent, it's so smart, and you're
Yeah.
not, you're so blind spotted. It's like, it's, I was thinking, not even thinking, I was seeing, it's like, well, this is my character, this is how I behave,
Yeah, right.
this is how Alina is. But no, it was just like this seeking attention energy that had a core of anger repression and frozen fear underneath.
Mm.
So yeah, and I mean, when obviously seeing that, working with my clients is a very different story right now, that I can bring them there. I can start pointing to in trainings as well. Like, it's just like, okay, how can we start living inside out every single day?
Yeah, you just brought up another topic for me, or that I would like to explore around identity and how we work with it in non-duality, since you're a non-dual teacher and you've done pointing to identity and who am I and all that. But I discovered the same thing, is that some of these deficiency stories that we see in our first or second dimension practice have roots in the body, deep roots, and that we can't, it's hard, I should say, to get to those deep roots in first or second dimension, is what I learned too. So what I've been trying to say to people who haven't done third dimension, many of people are out there are sort of spinning around and around, going in circles, examining the question of who am I, or resting as what I am, the awareness, which is all great. It's part of the, but if this identity has deep somatic roots, what I've been trying to say to people is that when you get into third dimension work, for me at least, the triggers left, because the triggers were not opening to some emotion. It doesn't mean emotions left.
Yeah.
Emotions are here, but the triggers to me were about identifying on some level, even if I wasn't aware of it, on some level, with some sort of false identity coming from the repression. And by getting to the repression, I think it's a deeper letting go of the identity, because you're getting to the roots of it. And so, but people who haven't done third dimension, they might be coming from the older way or the other way, which is the outside in, which means they're being pointed from awareness to who am I, but they're not going to the roots of that identity, is how I see it. But I don't know what your answer is to that. Let's just, I'm pulling that out here to see what you say about that in terms of getting to this identity in a different way through the body.
Yeah. And it's exactly what's been happening, as I'm saying, my fascination with the fact that so many years I've seen and woken up from, identity to body, at least in some degree, and mind. But it's quite fascinating that there was still all these years, the core identity, deficient identity of I'm unseen, therefore unloved and unwanted, was still there. was still there, unconsciously there, not until I got to work with repression and frozen fear. And from repression, it's just illuminating that, well, why I had to even believe that about myself, why I have to grab onto that identity and be so attached to the need for safety. So it's this need for safety that got unglued.
It's quite fascinating. I think it's such a blind spot, like for even for everyone who comes to non-duality and going the outside in. It's a huge blind spot, even for teachers that are teaching that and just kind of getting that. I think they're fulfilling their unlovability and not being seen by all these crowds listening to them. It's quite fascinating.
Very.
So it's so blind when we really don't get to the core of what truly got us into that really innocent grasping onto this separate, very, at some point, very, very subtle, but very, very triggering, right? When it gets inflamed, it gets very triggering. And it's definitely by addressing from the inside out, addressing first the repression around it, that I started to see, as I'm saying, I started to see it playing out and started to see it from a completely different perspective of seeing, because before I was blind to it. Before I thought it was Alina. And now it's just like, well, it's a layer to Alina's strategy to stay safe. It's a layer of Alina's strategy to get love. So yeah, it's definitely, so it led me to obviously unpack more anger underneath that. And I feel like the invitation for people, if people can really start from actually, which reversed, that's another thing, it reversed my trainings a little bit, starting from here and bringing people as much as fast as they can handle into a very resilient and skillful way of attending repression first. And then from there also bring, as I'm saying, I'm always saying the deficiency story, it's almost like a lid, or it's like a middle ground between all our stories, right? The second dimension, and between the roots, which is the repression. So if we start from the roots, like any kind of holistic approach, let's not trim, the branches, let's like go to the roots. And if we start from the root cause of the need to believe that deficiency story, then the falling away of identity with that, it just happens on its own, whether it's, an identity with a victim story, whether it's an identity with addiction, because addiction creates a certain identity, I'm just like that, I can't change, whatever it is. That is the kind of the visible effect, so to say, of the deeper roots.
The other thing you just said, which get to the root, I think a lot of people would be like, well, of course, and a lot of people thinking, well, I'm already getting to the root, and you thought that, and I thought that. So, right, there's the question right there is, in what way, when you went through that process of getting to the root, even if you feel something, or even if you discover repression, we still have to know how to work with it. And you mentioned earlier that you hadn't learned the skills at a certain point, but how did the skills help you to move through the resistance, the skills themselves, or did they help that?
Yeah. So I would say, for people who probably watching that, get a really skilled green checkmark facilitator to learn that, or get into all dimensions training to really have the understanding, not just understanding in your head, but experiential understanding of skillful way of bringing these tools into inquiry. And what do I mean by that? It's like, here, what comes for me, what really helps is like a weaving, not say no to any kind of dimension, but the weaving of knowing the second dimension tool so that I can bring and ignite and know how to find the right story, know how to find the right efficiency story, so that it can bring me more skillfully into repression. And first dimension, obviously, like, like how to skillfully bring awareness, because that will give us the ability to be with the most intense emotions and being able to lean into them without being distressed, or with assurance and confidence that nothing gets destroyed. Because, like, I mean, if we do it from the mind, then it could be very scary and it could be very distressing and could be very dysregulating. But if we do it from the right space of seeing and of intimacy, being with, bringing all our attention, which is awareness, into being one with the sensation, and yet not being infused by it, not being swallowed by it, not being entranced by it, but being with it. It's like such elements help us to really reach the two markers, which is feel better and move the energy.
Yeah.
In that skillful way, I think turning towards resistance and really allowing resistance to fully be there in a skillful way, let it speak whatever it needs to speak and not be afraid of that. Whatever it is, it maybe it wants to say really intense words like I want to die. I work with people that have that as a resistance, that it just like it's really intense to the conscious mind. It's like, well, why would I say those words? But if you do it so skillfully and just send it into the contraction or the pain, whatever they're working with, it just starts to move. We're acknowledging, we're really saturating that resistance with like, oh, okay, I see you. You're okay to be here. You're okay to be here too. And we're in this becoming more spacious and yet very attentive when things start moving.
So I have one more question for you, and it's almost like a $6 million question. Well, because you're a non-dual teacher and you're facing this already. So people come to you as they come to me, and I've flipped the message on them, and I lose people because they haven't verified yet, is what I think it is. They haven't come and done the work. If they would verify it, they would see, like you did, the bypass and everything. So what do you say to people who say, what does this have anything to do with awakening, Alina? This third dimension stuff. You're a non-dual teacher. Why are you missing there?
Wow. Like totally everything, my gosh. Wow. It's I always heard of embodiment, and I didn't really understood what it really meant. And then that's another interesting part. I remember hearing like Adyashanti talking about the awakening on the level of the gut, like kind of like really embodied all the way, a level of the mind, level of the heart, level of the gut. I feel that's what we're working with. Like, honestly, the self-regard, this last grasping at life, this is the third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. Like for me, I was so curious. And then I was listening to some other teachers, and there was this one other teacher, they had an interview with Adyashanti, and she's a non-dual teacher, and she was a friend of mine as well. Anyway, I had to talk with her, and she's like, well, for me, it happened when my kids grew up and I didn't have any more, these responsibilities, and therefore fear, and so on. And then I kind of landed in less, no self-regard, kind of not, can say whatever I want, not paying attention, not even paying attention. It was like not being self-conscious, of what we do. And it was kind of interesting. Oh my gosh, my kids have to grow up. I have 3 children. My little one is 7 years old. So I'm like, oh, this has to be like long from here on to really fully be embodied as awakening, as really being fully human and fully awake. And here it is. Third dimension actually does that. And it's fascinating. And I'm like, wow, I don't need to wait for my kids to grow up. I just need to deal with the fear that was there and that is still grasping at life, is still grasping at the need to stay afraid, is still grasping at the need to repress unsafe emotions, and just kind of limiting the broader or like the full spectrum of being human. So if we open up to the full spectrum of being human, then it actually leads us to the ability to be here now without the need to escape it.
Yeah.
That's very
Which,
peaceful, ordinary, but very peaceful.
well, let's listen to one follow-up question, which is because you said something in there about third dimension gets to, the words I would use is to that energetic self-contraction. Because I think a lot of people, maybe when we first come to awakening or these teachings, we might listen to the talk of awareness or shifting to the recognition of awareness as if that's it. And then if you shift that way from wherever you're identified to shift to that way, that you're the seeing, the one that sees to the seer, the seeing, that's it. But that for me, there's an energetic quality. It has to do with the contraction, often with trauma. You know, like this is where a lot of our suffering comes from. Can you speak to how, if that's true for you at least, the energetic quality of the embodiment process being something more than I'm the awareness? There's something else there that seems to happen. At least in my, that's how I language it. How would you language it?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, third dimension altogether, it's for me really when I really turn towards all of myself, however it looks, right? I feel like first there's an energetic component that starts happening when we have no resistance to anger, let's say, to move through, or have no resistance to fear to be here. I don't know if you're referring to the same thing, but for me, the experience of an energetic component that had given me is it's almost like, I don't know if I'm going in the right direction, but for me, it's almost a blissful, like being angry internally, it almost feels blissful. Being in fear, it almost feels blissful because it's no longer resisted. And in this no longer resisting that energetic component of myself being fully here, it liberates how would I say, the more actually ordinary and simple, lighter way of being oneself without the schism, the energetic kind of tension of needing to protect myself unconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I'm referring to, is that unconscious, that energetic component. Like for me and you, it was anger, repression, a lot of it, because that's our primary. So something unconscious within us that still contracts around life and relationship, that I felt like with the recognition of awareness that I couldn't get to that fully. That's what I meant. Like I'd shifted to the awareness, but there was something else going on in my unconscious, and it had everything to do with separation on some level. That's what I meant. But you've already been speaking about the whole interview, actually.
And it's interesting because there's the level of not identifying with anything that's happening when we wake up. You know, it's just like energies, but the body carries still the score and it gets contracted, right? And it gets, for me, what it was happening, this unseeing and this repression would just inflame in my chest. It would, as if my chest would like be ripped open in those moments. And the more aware we are, the more it's like really, really painful, and because we're not escaping anymore. So it's for people who are already experience a certain level of awareness, that's like, wow, this is the path to clear up everything, because everything becomes much more intense and much more in our faces. So it's like this chest lighting up on fire after doing the repression, even though, you know, there was no kind of conscious identity with it, but unconscious identity with it was still really, really happening. So that is no longer here. That is no longer firing up. And this is such a great relief, especially, I mean, I'm not saying I'm completely done. Intimate relationship, bring stuff up to here and go deeper. But you know, what a beautiful invitation having these tools, right?
Yes, thank you so much for being here, Alina. I'm going to bring you on YouTube more in the future. And if anybody, I just want to say thank you first.
Yeah, thank you.
But I also want to let people know, like, you're training people, you're taking people now. I assume you have openings in your training now for all dimensions training.
Yeah. So I have, apart for just one-on-one all dimensions training, which could be very personalized and training exactly to the level of where you're at and how to meet you and how to bring you inside out into all the places where you still feel stuck, maybe even not knowing so. But there's also, I'm also open, and I'm forming a small group training. So I have a few people signed up already, and it's all dimension small group training. It's 4 people, and there's a lot of beautiful intimacy that gets built, a lot of support, the ability to facilitate each other, which is peer support. It's quite fascinating. So I do have a few spots for that. I'm quite excited about moving forward.
Yeah, and you also do sessions with people.
Yeah,
Right?
I do sessions. Yeah, apart from training, I do sessions, so people can reach out definitely to work together.
And I also want to say that you may do groups outside of the members area, but if anybody wants to come and just sit with Alina, which would be like satsang on steroids, I would think. It's like you've got all the satsang that you normally get, but then you've got that deep somatic work. So obviously coming in the members area is one way that people can sit with you. Do you do it outside of that? You want to tell anybody about any of that coming up?
No, so there's in members area, there's Tuesday meetings. So it's really kind of, well, it was first dimension related, but now it's kind of a little bit first dimension and pointing to third dimension as well. But there is a meditation and practical experiential felt sense of just the beingness that we are. So that's the invitation. Which is the foundation to this work as well, and I think it's a beautiful element as well as in third dimension. So there's these Tuesday meetings, and there's also I'm doing a KI retreat with Darby, which is another trainer, and we're doing finally an in-person retreat this summer. Well, the end of July, we're 1st of July, so 28th of July in New York, upstate New York, near Albany, in nature and a log cabin, 4 days, 3 nights. With 2 powerful trainers and integral KI retreat. So that's what's happening.
How do people find out information about that, to sign up for that?
Well, okay. Information for KI retreat is kiretreat.com. So you can find information there and reach out to me directly. Would be info@kiretreat.com as an email, but we can post it underneath the video, some links so people can check that out. And of course, joining the members area, we'll put the links to that as well. And the training, if you'd like to book a clarity call with me to do a training, whether a small group or one-on-one, I will include the link below.
So thank you so much, Alina.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott.